My name is Sean, and tonight we're just going to be covering a lot of the basics of CorelDRAW. So I kind of like to start just by going over a few settings that sometimes go a little unnoticed. So if we go to the Tools tab up top here, we're going to go to Customization. And in here you can kind of customize your appearance, your save settings, and a lot of other features. We're pretty much going to just run through a few. The big one is appearance. So again, if you want to change around the appearance or anything like that, they have some themes already set up for you. So you can see how the color schemes will change around a little bit. So if the white's too much on your eyes, you can always change that to a medium, dark, or even black. The window border, you can just select by adjusting the different color palettes here. Once you find one you like, just hit OK, and that will save. If you need the scaling a little bit bigger at all too, you can do that in this page as well. Now, be aware anytime we adjust the appearance size, a lot of your tools will be hidden. So down here you have this little double arrow. So you'll notice when I go back to 100%, right now we pretty much stop around the font tool. If I go back to 100, you're going to see a lot more tools listed down here. So same with around your toolbars up top. So if you do adjust the appearance, just know that it might limit what you can see on your toolbars, but those double arrows, you just click it and then it'll open up the rest of your tools you couldn't see. All right, so under general, the thing I mostly change is if every time you open Corel, you see that welcome screen, I just switch it to start a new document. So it just kind of bypasses that, and then you pretty much open up a new document anyway. So, or you can set it to opening existing one, but I'll just set it to start a new, and then it kind of skips that first page for us. So in display, the main thing we're going to check here is just that the mouse wheel is set to zoom, and that's just going to allow us to zoom in and out of our designs with a lot more ease. Otherwise, you'll have to use our magnifying glass over here, and that's just not as easy. So if you have one of those mouse wheels in the middle of your mouse, that's what the zoom, we're going to set this to zoom, and again, that's just going to help us zoom in and out a lot quicker. And then the last one we'll edit is the save. So what we do is set it to every 5 minutes. It's going to be preset to 20. What this is changing our setting for us is when we're working on the design, it will automatically save or back up that design every 5 minutes. So this way, if you're working on a project and for some reason Corel crashes, or your electricity goes out, anything like that, as long as we have this set to 5, it'll back up that design and save it every 5 minutes for us. So you can make a temporary folder, and this is where it's going to be set, or you can do a specific folder and set it to your documents, your desktop. Now, if you want to do a specific folder, I would just create a specific folder somewhere, like in your documents. That way you don't have just a bunch of designs going onto your desktop or your document page. It's all in a nice folder. So those are the main ones we're going to change here. If you want to change your document, like the page size or anything like that, you can adjust that here too. So sometimes you'll see like 12 by 12 is a preset, just so it's a little bit larger. You can change a lot of your background colors if you want to edit any of those. So again, under the document, you can get a little bit more, you can customize a little bit more if you go through all these settings here. But the main one that I would change is the save. That way, when you're working on a project, it's going to save every 5 minutes for you. And when you're done, you just hit OK, and then all your settings would be updated. All right. So next, we'll kind of just go down our left toolbar here. Now the first one is going to be the pick tool. And if you left click and hold that, so we had a question, where do you find save in Corel 7? It's going to be the same place. So if you go to tools, customization, you'll see the save feature right here. So it's going to be same in all the Corels, all the different versions. You'll see the save under customization. If it looks like this, you'll just have to click your workspace, and then it'll drop down, and then you'll see the save option there. Right, so here we have our pick tool, and then we'll also have our freehand tool. So the freehand tool can come in handy sometimes, where if we have a couple different objects on our screen, maybe something like this, and I just want to select all the green squares, I can switch this from the pick, because if I try to do the pick this way and I grab all the green, well, that's going to select a couple of the purples with it. So if I drop this to freehand, I can just go around only the green squares and just select those 4 objects just like that. Or vice versa, if I just needed the purple, we could go around just like that and just select all the purple. So most of the time, in a design like this, you could definitely hold shift real quick and just select all the purple too. But that freehand, maybe if you're working with stones, that freehand tool will come in handy a lot. So underneath that, we have our different shape tools. So the first one is just going to be the simple shape. What that's going to allow you to do is, if you have a basic shape like this and click on it, you'll see these 4 squares around the outside. You can select those corners and just bring it in, and it'll just kind of soften those corners for you. When you're working with these different shape options, up top here, every one you open will have different features up top here. So if I want the scallop corners, I can select that, and the corners will adjust a little bit differently. Same with kind of the, I'm not sure exactly how to say that, the chamfered corner. It's just going to give a nice flat look just like that. So you have different kind of edges up top. If you want just the rounded, scalloped, or that just straight look, you can adjust that up here. All right, so there's a couple different shape tools that we can use. So I'll just make this a little bit bigger so we can see. Now, if you're working with the text and you want to use these tools or any object, we will have to make sure it's like converted to curves. So you can hit Control Q, you can right click, convert to curves, or you can actually hit the weld button up top here. So we just have our text, and now we'll go through the different tools. So the smooth, what this is going to do, now up top here again, you can see the different options that this tool has, so not as many as our last one. The nib size is pretty much that circle you see. So if you want that larger, you can adjust that right here, and that will increase the circle size. Let's make it a little bit bigger so we can really see it. So again, it's a little bit big. Just by adjusting that, you can change the circle size, which will impact a greater area when you select your design. So when you're using these shape tools, you have to first left click on the object you want. So now you can see it selected. And now when I go around this design, what this one's going to do is kind of soften all the sharp corners. So you can see how these different edges now, from going from something like this one to our edges here. So it's just going to kind of round those corners out for us. A good time to use this tool is, sometimes in a lot of our templates we might use like a star shape. maybe like around text or in a live template. So sometimes when we have really sharp corners like this and we cut like a thicker vinyl like glitter or something like that, sometimes it might be a little bit hard to weed some of those edges. So one way around that is you can actually take the smooth tool. So it's going to be right here under the pointer, smooth. You left click and hold just a little bit, and it's going to round those edges out for us just a little bit. And that's going to be a lot easier to cut and weed than those really sharp edges. Otherwise, you can, same with the text, you can just kind of give it that soft look just like that. I mean, we started with the impact font and now we have this shape here, so kind of creates a new font for you too. The smear is pretty cool too. If you left click first, again, you're going to select the text, and then you can kind of left click and hold, and you can get some kind of, it's kind of like a trippy look, but you can get some pretty cool looks too just using the smear effect. So we'll go back to the original text. So you just left click and hold it just a little, and you can go through the whole design like that. You can affect maybe just the bottom. But that's how we can get, if you had, so we had one question come in, if you just a font, can you save it as a new font? No. So creating a font, you need like a whole separate program to do that. So you'd actually, if you save the design like it is here, all it would do is just save as like an object, not an actual text. But if you like, that style, once you finish it, you can save it and then you can, reuse that design. But you can't just create like a new font through Corel itself. So the twirl, that's just going to kind of twirl our design just like that. So the more you hold it, the more twirls it's going to give. So just like that, we can go around our design and just kind of give it, like a unique look that way. So just kind of change a font up real quick, something like that. So when you're doing this, you're going to left click on the object to select it, and then left click and hold, and while you're holding, it will adjust that design. So the more you hold it, the more it will twirl. And again, up top here, you have your different adjustments. So you can twirl it different ways. You can speed up the twirl. You can make that design or that circle larger if you want. And that's going to, change the look of the design the more you edit it, or the more you kind of change these settings. Alright, so the next two are attract and repel, so it's kind of just like a magnet feature. So if I do the attract and hold it out here, it'll start pulling your design towards it. And the repel is just going to do the opposite, so it's just going to move it away from your circle. These ones are a little bit harder to control, and you can see what it's doing to our vector shape here. So it's kind of like the other ones you can actually still use and cut, where it just makes it, an effect like this, but these ones can really make it, if you try to go to your wireframe now, you'd never really be able to cut that with the vinyl. So I don't use these two, the repel and attract, too much. The next one would be the smudge tool. And we'll make this a little bit bigger. And that's just kind of give it this look here. So again, this is one where we probably wouldn't use it too much because it can really adjust the nodes and stuff of our design and make it kind of uncuttable. So great question. Is it always going to be a circle? Yeah, you're not going to be able to adjust the shape. And then we have the roughen, which is just going to kind of give you spikes around your design like that. So we can kind of just go through our design. And we can crank that up to 10, and when you do that, you can see how many more spikes it's going to kind of place in that area a lot quicker. So if you have this set to 1 or 2, it's not going to give you as many spikes as when it's set to a higher number like this. So those are just kind of some of our shape tools there. So again, most of, probably not going to use the attract, repel, and smudge too much. But the other 3 up top and the shape and then the roughen can definitely give you some cool looking, or you can go from a font to create, just a unique design just with the text like we did in this example. All right, so we're going to skip the crop right now just because we're going to move down to our freehand tool. So these are kind of our different tracing effects here, our tracing tools. Some people have preferences, whether it be freehand, the 2-point, the pen, or the B-spline. But when I trace most objects, I'm going to use the B-spline tool. I find it the easiest. So let's say, let me bring in a design real quick. So if we had like an image like this and they wanted us to trace it or create like a silhouette, we could use the B-spline, and just by left clicking, every time you left click, it's going to leave one of those dots behind, those squares, and what those are called are our nodes. So the more we left click, usually we can get more detail that way. But at the same time, we don't want to left click too much because all those little dots and nodes is what kind of our cutter will read. So the more nodes, the more little cuts it has to make and everything like that. So in the shirt and some of those areas like that, we can definitely get more detail. But if it's just a straight kind of up and down, we don't need to just left click just to kind of click. So if the line if you can continuously follow without clicking it, we'll do that. But around these edges, maybe around the shirt, we'll want to click a little bit more so we get more detail. So at this point, I don't need to click as much going down the arm because there isn't as many like curves and stuff like that. So maybe going around the mitt, we want a little bit more detail. So then I can click a little bit more. So the different tools will help you trace different feature, or the B-spline I find the easiest just because you're simply left clicking, and where you left click, it's just going to be your next point. You can see the line the whole time. So I find this easier, but if the freehand or the 2-point or anything like that, you're already more familiar with those. Those are anything that you feel comfortable with, I would just continue it. But for me, the B-spline usually is the easiest, and I can get the most detail that way too. So you can just kind of go around your design, and I'll go ahead and hurry up and just finish this one so we won't get as much detail. And then when you finish, you just connect those 2 last points, and that's just going to give us a nice silhouette just like that. So the freehand, you just kind of left click and hold, but you can see when I try to do that, it's not going to be a nice straight line. It's very hard to keep it like super straight. So that's kind of why I like to use the B-spline. You have the 2-point line, which again, probably isn't the best tracing tool. And as you can see, I'm probably worse with the Bezier tool, but you just kind of keep going down your line. But again, you can see that I pretty much work strictly with the B-spline. All right. So we're going to skip the artistic media tool. We're not going to use that on this one. The next few we're going to cover are our basic shapes. So we have our rectangle tool. And again, anytime we open like a new feature or shape or different tools, every time we're using different tools and features, up top here you'll see different like effects. So you can actually bring in the corners already in your square for the shape tool. There are little kind of cheats when you create like a shape. If you want to make a perfect square, you can hold control while you use the shapes, and that will work with any shape. So whether it be a star, a circle, if we want it to be perfect, we hold control while we do that. And we had a good question come in: can the nodes be adjusted after you trace? And yes, you can. So when you have your design like this, if you want to go back and edit any of those nodes, you just double click. And then if, let's say you want to delete it, you can double click to delete it. If you want to adjust it, you can literally click on any part of it and bring it, adjust it however you want. Now obviously that's going to look a little bit funny, but you can take control over the nodes however you want and readjust any part of your design. So if you left click and hold the star, you'll see some different shapes and different, a lot of different shapes. You have your basic shapes, your arrows, flowcharts, banners, and callouts. So a lot of these different shapes and banners and stuff like that we can use to help us design and create like a lot of basic templates and everything like that. So with our Polygon tool here, one thing, again, up top here, you can see the different points inside. So if I want to make these different shapes, I can control that up here. One thing I like to show with these basic ones is how we can start with just a basic polygon shape like this. We can open up our envelopes, and we'll go over the envelope section in a little bit. But real quick, I can hit add new. I can bring this down. Bring this down, a little bit less there, and we went from that polygon shape to just a basic shield now. Joseph, when you say I don't have that one, are you talking about the Polygon tool? Okay, perfect. All right. So we have a nice shield now that we can use for our design purposes. So if I go back to my basic shapes, now I could take possibly like a banner. Up top here, you can select different shapes or different banners. So we kind of have a few different samples in here that you could use for your banners. So then we can take our banner, bring it across our design here. and now we can kind of start building some possible templates that we can use. So in these different shapes, your basic shapes, you can see you have the hearts, just some random shapes through here. So if you ever need any of those, you can just select them real quickly from your basic shape. So you probably won't use pretty much like the flow chart and stuff too much, but there are a lot of different shapes in here if needed as well. Same with the call outs. We don't really typically use those too much in the designs we have, but if you ever need something like that, it even has little stuff like that. All right, so the another main tool or big tool you'll see us use in Corel a lot too is going to be the Smart Fill tool. So down here you'll see the Smart Fill. If you don't see this little Smart Fill tool down here, it could just be because, again, your screen is too large, or you have your screen maybe set a little bit too large, or your zoom, and it might have like two little arrows down here at the bottom. If you click on those, you should see the extra tools, but usually these are the first three that get hidden. So the Smart Fill, what that's going to do for us is, one example we can use is our magic patterns. So I can fill this a bunch of footballs. So we have a pattern just like that. So anytime, right now, it's pretty much cut out of our green like that. So this is just an open background here. So if I take my Smart Fill, let's say I want this an actual football vector now, I can just fill in these little areas here with my Smart Fill, weld them all together, and from that object there, I have a brand new football vector that I can now use in my design. So I can bring that up here, bring this back. And now I have maybe a football template that I can use. Now, one thing with the Smart Fill, it has to be the setting. You won't be able to adjust the pattern fill. It's gonna adjust to the size of your design. So depending on how big your design is, so I started with this template here. If I make it smaller compared to this one here, and I use the same template, you'll see how different it's going to look depending on your fill. So the larger ones, you'll see more of the footballs. When it's smaller like this, you know, it's going to have a different fill effect. The shield shape we actually made starting with one of our polygon shapes. So we selected our polygon. We made it a 6-sided polygon. We made it a perfect shape by holding Control. And then by just using our envelope, our single arc, we click Add New. And then we just bring this down a little here, this down a little bit here. You can even puff out the sides a little bit if you want. And now we have our shield shape. No, so, and then we had one more question with the patterns. If you shrink it down, will it adjust the fill, or will it adjust the fill if you shrink it? No, so once you apply the shape or the pattern, now you can make this, you know, the same size, and this one's going to be a complete, you know, filled the same way. They're just obviously going to be smaller footballs now, but it's not going to like shrink the pattern or anything like that. Or it's not going to adjust the pattern. So any questions on anything we've covered so far? So the magic patterns are actually those are actually patterns that we've created. So you can get those right from our site. So if you just search magic patterns on our site, those are how those were created. I was just using one of those to kind of show you the smart fill effects. But yeah, the patterns themselves aren't. Corel doesn't have any pattern, like magic patterns themselves. Now, one feature in Corel that will actually kind of let you create your own patterns is going to be the power clip feature. So let's say, let me open up my live templates real quick just so I can pull some clip art in. All right. So if I had a couple footballs maybe like this, and I wanted to create my own pattern, I could tile these, I could make them all random and crooked, you know, however I wanted these. For this example, we'll just kind of do a simple tile like this. And once I have all those set, I'm going to go ahead and weld that together. Yeah, so the magic pattern tab you can open regardless from, we just had a question, do you have to buy the patterns to get the tab? No, if you hit magic patterns, you'll actually have these the heart, these 3 circles, and then the 2 stars already preloaded into the software. So you already have, if you have the wizard, you actually have a couple patterns preloaded. You just need to open them by hitting the Docker up here and then TRW magic patterns. And then you should see those, I think there's like 6 or 7 that you get. Now, if you want to create your own pattern with any type of clip art or vectorized design, like we did in this example here, this is just a vector all welded together. So we're going to right click, and this first option is going to be power clip inside. So now I'm going to select that, and you're going to see this little arrow. So this arrow is pretty much asking you where do you want to apply this pattern to. So if we select our shield here, it's going to throw those footballs in our shield. Now you can see that I just have the pieces of the football here. Now let me change this a bit so we can see some actual color. So you can see these are just parts of the football in my pattern. So if you click on the design and kind of hover towards the bottom, you'll see these options. This first one to the left is going to say edit power clip. So when we select that option, it's going to show you the pattern you just made, and behind it you'll see your kind of object you're putting the pattern to in those blue lines. Excuse me. So I can select this pattern now and resize it. I can rotate it, I can duplicate it, so if I want even more, I can add more footballs at this point. Make those smaller so then I see even more. And once I'm done, I just hit this OK, or this check mark. And now you can see how we've added the pattern and, you know, adjusted it, and now you can see a lot more of those footballs throughout the pattern. So you can kind of create your own patterns using the power clip. Actually weld those together. So if I make those a little bit bigger, maybe put it off center a bit, hit OK, you'll get a totally different looking design that way. So I can hit convert to curves, right click, and then if I want to take those out now, I can hit that. And when this has this X now, it's looking for a power clip frame, so then anything you hold over it will just snap into it just like that now. And if you want to get rid of it, you got a frame type, none, and that's just a right click, frame type, none, and then it's just back to its normal. Yeah, so once if it has that X on it, you can take any design, once you have a shape, it'll just kind of snap right into there now. And then again, when you're done, frame type none, and then it'll just take that away. All right, so now we're going to go over a few of the different weld, trim, back minus front. So a lot of these tools we get a lot of questions on. So when you select two different objects, up top here, you'll see a lot of these tools pop up. And this is our TRW toolbar, so you'll actually see a few of these here too. But on our main Corel toolbar, you'll see now if you don't have two objects selected, it won't give you those options. So the minute I select both of those objects, now we can see a couple of these different options it's going to give us. So we have a few that kind of do very similar things, so it can get a little confusing. So the trim is simply where whatever, our blue is on top of our red. So when I click trim, wherever this blue is on that red, it's pretty much just going to trim that area out. So simplify does that same effect pretty much. So any of those overlapping areas will just be, again, trimmed out. So trim and simplify are a very similar tool. And then the last one here is back minus front. So back minus front is similar because it will trim out this area behind the blue, but when you click back minus front, it gets rid of that front object completely. So it will take that out, but it will take away our blue shape at the same time. So sometimes we want that feature. So sometimes like we might have maybe a star shape up here and up here as part of like our crest or part of our shield. Sometimes we want that subtracted through it. So we would just do back minus front. So select the star, hold shift, select the shield, back minus front. And now those stars are completely removed from our shape. Right, so do I have that trimmed out? No. So the next one is going to be intersect. And the intersect is where the blue intersects with the red. So this part, these parts to the outside where, and I can go to my wireframe here. So pretty much this area here and this area here aren't actually overlapping our shield. So what the intersect will do is any area that's overlapping, when you select the intersect tool, will be highlighted or create like another layer on top of it. So if we have like a nice banner shape, but I just simply want that banner not to go outside of it, I can put this on top, hold shift, intersect, and now it's just going to stop just like that. So it kind of can give us like a nice look through our design like that. And then front minus back would just be the opposite, so it would take away the shield there. So most of the time we wouldn't use that tool. And then last is going to be weld. Weld would combine all this as one design. So after we weld something, and this was just an extra piece, so ignore that. Let me go back, just select these two. So you can see that's just an extra piece there. But weld would just make this a single object. And once you weld something, you can't, it's not like a group where you can't go back and ungroup it. It's pretty much stuck like that. So, you know, that's kind of like our last, usually when we are getting a design ready to cut, we'll start welding all the similar colors just so it separates as one. No, so yeah, someone asked, can you weld and keep both colors? No. If you wanted this to come up as like one object at the moment, but later want to ungroup it for any reason, you would do a group. So you could right click and hit group objects, or the shortcut would just be Control G. And when you did that, you'd see these little marks up here. That's just your ungroup objects. So right now, if I click on either one, it will select them both, and you just hit ungroup, and then you can, you know, go back and edit if you want. But if you were to hit weld at this point, it's just all one object. And if you hit break apart, the only thing it's going to break apart are these little star shapes. So it's not going to like break apart that cross or like that banner at all. It would just subtract those stars out and make that a flat object. So we don't really want to, you know, welding mostly is like if you're working with the template or getting ready to cut, we'd weld all the colors and objects together that we'd want to cut as one, and then it would separate a lot easier. And then we do have the boundary tool as well. So that's simply any of this, like if we have both of these objects selected, I hit create boundary, it would just create a boundary around our entire design just like that. So it won't cut out the star shapes, like it's just going to find that outside piece or, you know, object and simply put a boundary around it. So even if I just had my shield like this and I said boundary, or create a boundary around it, it's just going to give me my shield without those little stars taken out of it. But sometimes, like, the reason we use a boundary on a design like this is because I could now take that boundary, put a contour to the outside, actually let's do two, and I could break those apart and take this layer, hold shift, and then again I want this, and then let me edit my color so I can show you what I'm doing a little bit easier. Where this orange is, I want to subtract through the black, but I don't need that orange piece anymore. So the best tool to use in this situation would be the back minus front, because it's going to separate my orange from the black, like cut through it, plus remove it at the same time because I don't need it anymore. So I hit back minus front, I have that cropped out. My original boundary I can now delete, and now this just gives me like a nice edge around my design to kind of give you a nice border. So that's a quick way to, you know, if you want like a border around your, yeah, so we just had someone ask if we can do that again, no problem. So we have our two shapes, I highlight them both, select boundary. So this is my boundary now. I'm just going to make this pink just so we can see it. And then I'm going to select my contour option. I set it to 2 contour steps. And it doesn't matter what our colors are right now. We can always change that. So when you like the, the offset, the size of it, you just right click on the contour, hit break, contour group apart. It's going to be grouped at the beginning, so we just hit ungroup. Then we select our layer here. So let me make that just a blue so we can see. We select our blue, hold shift, select the black. And again, I want that blue to go through the black, and I don't want the blue anymore. So then I hit back minus front. This is our original boundary. I can get rid of that. And now it'll give me a nice border around my design. Alright, so last thing we'll touch on tonight is just the tracing features in Corel. So, and this is a big one too when someone kind of sends you maybe their logo. So what we're starting with here is pretty much just image. So when you move this around, you don't see any cut lines, anything like that. It's just pretty much a grayed out box, and you can, you'll have the outlines to the box, but you don't see something like this. Like let's say I had a star shape like this, and I move this around. When you see those blue lines like that, that means those are like the cut lines that your cutter would read. So if you have these like grayed out lines like this, your image, pretty much what the cutter is reading, it would just be like the outside of the square. So it wouldn't actually cut, that G shape at all. So what we're going to do up top is when we select an image like this, you'll have these options again pop up top here. So if I don't have this image selected, you don't see those features that were just there. So the edit bitmap and trace bitmap. So we're going to select trace bitmap, outline, and these are all of our tracing features that we're going to pretty much use when we're trying to like recreate a logo or design someone from a picture someone sent us. The quick trace you can use too if it's kind of just like a black and white image, but I would just get in the habit of going to outline. And it doesn't matter what option you choose first here, because when we get to our options, our next screen, it's going to give us all 6 of those options right here. So you can go through the different options and pretty much see what gives you the best result. So all these ones are coming in pretty good actually. Maybe if we go to low quality, yeah, actually these ones are all coming in pretty similar. You can see when I go to high quality though and really zoom in, you can actually see these different shades of blue. You might see some of the rough edges down here. So those are what, when we're tracing something like this, we want to try to have it as simple as possible. So if I go to my color tab right now, we don't really see it that much, but there's actually showing 4 different colors of red, 3 different colors of yellow, a few different colors of white, 6 or 7 different shades of green, same with the blue. So when we get to an issue like this, let's say we really like the way it came out, what we can do now is combine all the similar colors. So I can hold Control and select all the red, and you'll see now how the lines go through the red. So I have let me start over because I had one of the white selected too. So how those lines are going through all my section here, that's showing you what you have selected, and then I can hit merge, and all that's one color now. Same with our yellow, merge, and I can do it with all the white as well. merge, and then again, I'm just holding control, selecting all those same colors. So now, in the end, we have the actual layout we wanted. And when we zoom in, the lines look a little bit cleaner too. So when I'm done, I can hit OK. It's going to keep our original. I can just hit delete. Now it's going to come as a group design, so I'm going to hit ungroup. I can get rid of my background, and now I have my design. And if I highlight and move this around, now you can see that it's the blue line. So those are our blue cut lines. And these will all be, you know, individual pieces once we so what color does it default to? It's gonna so when you're in the tracing page, whichever one you select, let me add a couple colors real quick. So if we select this top one first and then hold control and select the bottom one, it's going to merge into that top one. Is that what you're asking? Okay. And on the setting page here, if you don't want this white, you can hit remove background and it won't bring in that background white color for you too. So now if you go to colors, now this is where Corel gets a little weird, is if, even though that white we removed it, if I remove this white, see how it removes my red now? So if it does something like that, like if you have like a one color design, like if I merged all these together as one color, you'll still see this white here. So that actually combined all the colors when we did it that way. If I remove this white now, it's going to remove my whole design. So you always kind of have to have two colors in your palette here. Yeah, so once you have this created, we had a question, if you took your design just like we had here, and you have them all selected, and you create a boundary, it would create a boundary around all of them and just give you one solid shape. So what you could do is create a boundary around it, and then just kind of what we did with our contour, maybe add 2 steps, break those apart, select our dark green, ungroup both of those, remove shapes, and now remove that top layer. And if you want to add like a little boundary like that to make it stand out, you could easily do that now. All right. So that pretty much wraps up our webinar tonight. Do you guys have any additional questions on maybe anything we didn't cover, or do you need to see anything again? If you wanted like a contour around each color, you would have to select the individual color, and you could like add, you know, a contour around each one if you wanted to, if that's what you were saying. But you'd have to, you'd have to select each one individually. But yeah, you definitely could do it that way too. Perfect. Yeah, so there's a couple things we didn't really dive too much into the envelope and a couple other features tonight. So probably next week, what I'll do is kind of a part 2, and we'll get into more of a little bit more of like using these features and actually designing with them too. So it's one thing to see the features, but more of how we can use those to create actual designs and stuff like that. You know, that will help a little bit more too. So probably next Monday, I'll do part 2 of an overview, but it will focus on a little bit more of the envelope plus designing with a lot of the features we learned tonight. Awesome. Perfect, perfect. All right, guys. Well, if there's anything you want to see in part 2, if there's anything in part 2 you would like to see as well, let me know, and I'll definitely try to add that to the next series too. This one will be uploaded to YouTube. I'll get it up by tomorrow for sure, and then the recording will just be in the same. I'll put it up on Facebook so you can get the recording from there. You can just go to our YouTube channel, or if you actually like purchase the download or the webinar, which, you know, it's free, so it's not really like you're purchasing it, but if you actually purchase it through the site, it will be dropped into your account and you can get the link that way. So 3 ways to get the link: 1, Facebook tomorrow; 2, just go to YouTube and it'll be one of the most recent videos; or 3, you know, go through the website, purchase it, so it actually drops into your account. Awesome. And I'm pretty sure Matt's going to be going live tonight. So it's a surprise that he actually waited for me to get through the webinar. He usually likes to cut me off. But I think he's going to go over a little bit of the sale and everything tonight. So if you haven't seen that yet, again, on our site, you guys unlock pretty much everything, which is awesome. So I believe it's each night, he picks a winner for each one. So definitely I would check that out. 9 p.m. for Matt. Thank you, Joseph. So that you'll get one winner. You know, we'll release or we'll go over the winner each night. So he's going to go over live. I think there might be a new artwork pack being released tonight too. So definitely check that out. If you haven't seen, 70% off all the artwork, fonts, and designs. So, and then again, all 5 of these top featured products are all free for the week. So literally just put them all in your cart, purchase it at $0, and then you can use all these designs maybe before the 4th. But otherwise you'll still have them in your account. All right, but thank you guys so much. If we don't talk before, have a great and safe 4th of July. And we'll definitely, I'm not sure if I'll have another webinar this week just with the holiday and stuff like that, but next Monday, I'll definitely have part 2 of this webinar, probably around the same time, 7:38. All right, guys, thank you so much. Have a great night.